Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli o'quvchilar, teletomoshabinlar. Bugun demak, amaliy geografiyadan bo'ladigan darslarda ozgina o'zgarish eksperiment qilishga qaror qildik. Ya'ni bugungi mavzuni ingliz tilida olib boraman. Mabodo kimgadir qiziq bo'ladigan bo'lsa. So, good morning, dear students. My name is Sabir Qadirov, and I will continue my geography classes. Today's topic is the world really overpopulated? Overpopulation means too much people on the earth. So I will try to break very popular stereotype like too much people on the earth. So let's begin. I'm going to follow these contents. First of all, the determining of terms, the name, the definition of population, and reliable information exists for only developed countries, reproductive rights and wrongs, the global politics of population control, cui bono, this is Espanol, which means who benefits, and some references. Determining the terms. I think it's not so right to say or use the term of population. Why? Because the population refers in many cases for animals and plants. So, but we know, we understand that we are human beings, mankind, not animal, not plants. So, animals of a particular, if you go to the dictionary, animals of a particular type or group who live in one country, area, or place called population. And therefore, in most times, population is referred to the animals and plants, as I told you before. However, we are not nation. We are nations, folks, or people, not population. Matthew Connolly told, when people ask, is the world overpopulated? I always want to ask them, who did you have in your mind? Is there anyone in particular you think maybe should not have been born? When you talk about overpopulation, which means someone shouldn't be here, but it's not so prudent to say this. It is important to identify who's actually doing the environmental damage and why. There is a big difference between poor peasant farming the land and fossil fuel corporation executive. We know nowadays a lot of huge corporations, companies, they are using land to get the oil and other resources of the land, but you have to feel the difference between the farming or peasant and this company. Our population framework tends to lump all humans together into one broad category, not differentiating between the differential or different impacts on the planet. What I'm trying to say in this context is that very big, huge companies, they are getting from the overall the world very different resources. And the damage is much more higher than damage doing the farmers. For example, The US is probably the country with the greatest fear of overpopulation. Ironically, they have given so much land and so many resources. Why they think so? Do they have a really overpopulation problem issue, or there is something wrong? We will see in the next pages, slides. So, who benefits? These days, a lot of people are discoursing about Bill Gates or Ted Turner, who is founder of CNN, broadcasting company. And we can quote from Prince Philip, who said, "If I were reincarnated, I would wish to be returned to the earth as a killer wires to lower human population levels." Or another very popular person, Jacques Cousteau, "In order to stabilize the world population, we must eliminate 350,000 per day of population." And Henry Kissinger, you can a lot of information find about, again, Henry Kissinger, what he said about the decreasing of population. What is interesting here, Oxfam International came out with the result of their study that the world's richest 1% people probably emit 3 times more CO2 emission than the poorest 50% of the planet. The message what I'm trying to give you, you should understand here, the richest people, which probably consist of 1%, they are emitting 3 times more CO2 emissions to the Earth than the poorest 50% of the planet. So, as the question rises, cui bono, or who benefits, these people are so rich and they own big corporations or companies, only they are concerned about the overpopulation of the world, which is not correct. According to the Population Research Institute in USA, reliable information only exists for only developed countries. For instance, in Uzbekistan population census, the last time was in time of ex-USSR. But we planned to do it in future, 2022, so in the future. The earliest data for population start from 1820s. Before that time, maybe we had census, the counting of population, but no information about it. So, the earliest information we can find after 1820s. So, if we are thinking, or we are saying that the population of the world is 7.7 billion, so the information we can trust exists for developed countries. And we know around very developed countries, there are 7 or 8, and we can say about 20, big 20. But how about others? And we know nowadays we can say roughly 200 countries on the earth. So, problem starts with the thinking. Henry Ford said, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason so few people engage in it, which means, in other words, most people, they don't have their own point of view, own ideas. So they are not checking, only thing they are getting the information from a television or so-called tube. You switch on the tube and get the information. But as you know, the hardest work, very difficult work is thinking, so few people are engaged in it. Sorry. So, René Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. So, when you start to think about the ideas, so only with this way you can prove that you exist. George Bernard Shaw said, 2% people think. 3% people of the 3% of the people think they think. But 95% of the people would rather die than think. So, make your decisions and make your own ideas or things about this issue. And many times when I talk about this issue, people start to discuss with me. Just they ignore this information. And what can I say? Socrates said, the only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. Maybe you have to stop ignore the facts and start to think to prove you exist. And of course, as we know from the Henry Ford, it is very hard to, but you have to start. Living in oblivion. In the 1920s, a demographer, very famous demographer of the United States, Raymond Pearl, estimated the globe, the world, could support 2 billion people, while today about 7.7 billion dwell here on the earth. Again, at the beginning of last century, demographer Pearl calculated that only 2 billion people can reside here. But what we have now, 7.7 billion. And when I was preparing this lecture, this information, I found there are some alternative informations that are saying that in the previous centuries, very long time ago, on the earth, there were even more, up to 25 billion people living on the earth. But now, 7.7. So, it's not a big deal, 7.7, even 7.7, it's not a big problem. So, we can survive and can be happy on the earth. All the information we are getting through the radio, television, or internet comes from the science. Science, ironically, you see, science and science have same pronunciation. one is like a mark, another one is like a research, subject, study, science, but pronunciated the same. If you remember the previous lessons, the last one, I told you about climate, iklim. So these words have same root, same meaning. But here, what I'm trying to say, science, in reality, it's the science from God, not the information what we have now. Science, our ancestors meant that science means science from God. God gives you from His knowledge, and you are getting it, and you call it like a science from God. Little example. Good morning. Maybe you cannot understand, okay, this is information, we can get it, but how about good morning? In reality, the good morning is, just imagine this without one O, God morning. God's morning, God's evening. You see? What I'm trying to explain is, if someone can tell me, okay, Sabar, good morning, but I have, let's say, not so good mood. Maybe I'm failing my subject, my mood is not so good. So, but they are saying good morning. Personally, for me, the morning is not good. If you shift to this point of view, it makes sense and you can understand it is God's morning. Good or bad or normal, it's God's morning. If God gives you this morning, you will have it. Otherwise, no. Living in oblivion means you have forgotten why you are here, on the earth, why you are living, for what you have to spend your time, your life. You have forgotten completely. Only thing, only concern that you are moving with is maybe making money, making more money. No, it is not our mission. Our mission is get all science from God properly and use it properly too. So it is very important to understand spending your life properly or rightly. Here you can find some references, English, Russian. By the way, if you are trying to find the information about overpopulation, it's not easy. Because, again, the true information, it's so few and very difficult to find. But overpopulation, if you open it, you can find tons of information. Overpopulation, again and again. By the way, one point I want to mention about China. In the previous lessons, I told you about China. China, they are taking off obstacles, which means from 1980s up to 2015, it was stopped to have more than one children, more than one child. Now, China is removed this obstacle, so this means they can have more than one children. So it seems unlogic. Why? We know that China has 1.5 around billion people, but this nation is not enough, which means for China. That's why they are saying, okay, you can have more than one. We can conclude that except some countries of Asia and Africa, in the world, globally, the population growth is decreasing, not increasing, decreasing, going down, down, down again and again. Chinese are very smart. They understood this issue. If you will keep this trend, you will face a lot of problems after some years. So they just said, okay, you can have it. I think the lesson was interesting for you. If you have questions or additional information, data, you can share with me. You can find on the board my email address anytime. Just contact me. I will be happy to contact with you. Goodbye for now.